From Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of Parashat Shelach, connecting with God. Find the Talmud in Sota, page Mem Zayin, 47a. The Talmud speaks of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, great high priest in the ancient times, where he once heard the Levites, they were singing a song, came from the Psalms, from the Proverbs, and they said, Ura lama tishan. They've quoted the verse that said, Tehillim 44, wake up, God, why do you slumber? And Yochanan Kohen Gadol said, this is terrible. God doesn't sleep, doesn't slumber. Hinei lo yanum v'lo yishan, Shomer Yisrael, the guardian of Israel, neither sleeps nor slumbers. The Levites were trying to reach out to God. They were calling to God in their desperation. And the question is, what is an appropriate way in which we can call out to God and connect with God? In this Parashat Shelach, we find that the Jews in the desert were unhappy with the way that God was asking them to relate to God. They had their own way of relating to God, and then God gives us another way in which we can also relate to God. 3 ways in which we can relate to God discussed in this Parsha. First thing was, the Jews said, we're not going out of the desert. We're not leaving Egypt. We're going back. We're not going to the land of Israel. Why not? They wanted to relate to God through the world of experience. Now, the world of experience is tricky because, on the one hand, certainly one can feel the miracles of God all around us. Sometimes you're in a near car accident, you feel the hand of God. Sometimes you have troubles with your children, things turn out okay, you feel the hand of God. Sometimes you're looking for a spouse or a partner, and you find the right one, and you feel the hand of God. But it's tricky because sometimes you think you found the hand of God. People find false faiths, false messiahs, and they think they found the hand of God. They see things happen in the newspaper, in history, and a world around us, and they think they have it all figured out. Just trying to live from the world of experience, experiencing God in the desert, as inspiring as that was, that cannot be the basis of our relationship with God. Then God turned to them and he was asking them to go to the land of Israel. It says in Devarim, describing the same story, let's go. Let's go to the land of Israel. Come, inherit the land of Israel. And what did the Jews say? They said, no, we're comfortable here in the desert. Many pre-modern writers describe the idea that the Jews enjoyed the desert. After all, Shimon Bar Yochai says, the Torah was only given for those who sat in the desert, learned Torah, ate leman, didn't have to worry about parnasa, making a living. It was wonderful. And this was something they enjoyed. So God says to them, no. Well, what's God's argument? After all, what's wrong with that life? Why didn't God just keep that going? Why couldn't we forevermore live on the hand of God, from the hand of God to our mouths, feeding us the fish and the slav, the quail, feeding us the man from heaven, the well of Miriam, the plentiful water, occasional oasis. And we wouldn't have to work, we wouldn't have to establish a country, worry about the building blocks of building a nation, ugly work of having to conquer and destroy and conquest and battles. Why couldn't we just stay in the desert? What's going on? And God says there's an element in life called establishing a place for God, a place where God expresses himself in the real world, in an actual world, a world that's part of the rest of the world. The currency of being part of the world is being country. The world exists in countries. Like if you want to be a player in math, you have to be a number. To be a player in money, you have to have some cash. You want to be a player in the world of politics, in the world of ideas, you have to be a country. And sure, God says, as a country, you can make an impact in the whole world. As a country, you and bring out these latent ideas in the Torah. You can bring them to life. What does it mean to be kind? How is that expressed in the nation? What does it mean to care for the downtrodden? How is that expressed in a country? I'm not saying we have it all figured out today in the land of Israel, but it's something we strive for. It's something only a country can answer that question. How do ethics work in this world? They didn't want to do that. Just want to learn about it. Just leave it in the world of the Platonic ideals and think about the concepts. But what's missing is to be able to bring those ideas and ideals to the real world, to the actual challenges on the ground. And that was what they were missing. Sometimes we can connect with God simply by bringing the ideal world into this world. And that's how they were asked to connect God to the real world. Finally, we can connect to God through the mitzvot. Say it every day. We put this paragraph from the end of the parsha about the tzitzit, we put that in our daily Shema. What's that doing there? It doesn't say you have to say it every day. I mean, what's that doing there? Part of it is to do the old mitzvot, to understand that we have to do mitzvot, and that we can connect to God through mitzvot. We don't have to sort of just close our eyes and just imagine God. We have this very real connection. God asked me to put on tzitzit, I put on tzitzit. God asked me to put on tefillin, I put on tefillin. God asked me to keep Shabbat, I keep Shabbat. And it's like a connection. Think of mitzvot not as something you have to do, but as conversation. God asks you, and you respond. This is what Shabbat is about. This is what all mitzvot are all about. That's why at the end of the parsha, it speaks about Shabbat, it speaks about tzitzit, it speaks about remembering the Exodus, it speaks about challah, the mitzvot of nisachim, all kinds of mitzvot, libations. Because if we want to relate to God, we have to relate ultimately by following His word. And that's what the other thing that the Meraglim, the spies, didn't get. It doesn't matter how idyllic life was in the desert. When God says move, you move. And that too is a relationship. To understand that we're doing God's work. Person serving the Israeli army, understanding, sitting there hour after hour in night guard duty, sitting in a battle, going house to house. What a despicable thing to do. And yet, this is the word of God. Establish a country. In that country, live the way of God. Be part of the currency of the world in which countries have an impact on other countries. As a country, make a statement of what the world could be. Not in the battle. Battle is hard to communicate. But in the life that we establish in that country, that we carve out. This is the challenge. This is the mitzvah, to live in the land of Israel, to carve out a land. This was something that people in the desert didn't understand. The idea, connecting to God through the mitzvot, and connecting to God by establishing God's kingdom, not in the heavens, but here on earth. Thank you for joining us here in discussion of the Parsha Shelach. Join us each week for a discussion of the Parsha, the various holidays. Thank you, Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.